All right, I've got a little bit of an interesting situation here on this RZR 900. This is a 2013 model. I have gone and replaced the stator, the regulator rectifier, as well as the battery. I'm not getting any spark. I hear some clicking up at the solenoid, which makes me think either a starter issue or a battery issue. Obviously, I've replaced the battery. The starter solenoid is good. So I decided to pull this stator cover again and see what we had underneath of here. So we have got our starter here. We know now that that is good. We've got an idler gear here as well as here. And then we've got our generator or flywheel here. And then our starter gear, our starter drive behind here. So we've got a small gear here. And what it is, you can pull that gear almost all the way out. And behind there is actually a shaft and a nut. So this nut can be tightened up. What had happened here is this nut had actually been loosened up for whatever reason during the use. It got loosened up, and when I went to start the machine, it actually was kind of binding in there. Thankfully, it didn't break the case. It wasn't bad enough yet, so I'm glad I caught it at the point that I did. To where we're going to tighten up that nut there. We'll have to remove our flywheel. Going to tighten up this nut here, this lock nut, and then that will keep this gear from pivoting in there and keep it like it should. So gonna make sure and slide this back down to where it needs to go. Make sure everything turns over properly. I wanted to show you that. Almost everybody that's got a starter problem, it's gonna be the battery or the starter. And so typically when people are telling me they've got a Polaris RZR or a Polaris Ranger that clicks, I'm gonna say check your starter, check your battery. Now, I've got a gear in there that I want you to check as well. Obviously the first things I would check is your starter and your battery, since those are easy to get to. This stator cover is not hard to pull. I've done a separate video on how to do that, so I didn't go through that process, but I did want to show you that gear there and make sure that you've got a good one. Also, while you're here, make sure you check your other gears. Make sure there's no teeth moving. Make sure that they spin properly. And then also this gear here, same thing. Make sure it spins properly. Make sure your starter moves over freely without any catching or any noise. So thank you guys for watching. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give us a thumbs up. I've got plenty more videos to do on this Polaris RZR 900. So make sure you check out my other videos. Hit the thumbs up button if you found this video helpful. Subscribe to our channel. All right, so we've got the stator off here, and I've showed you how to do that. Now we're going to take the flywheel and remove it. Like I showed you earlier in this video, we've got our starter drive here. This shaft and the starter drive is going to be able to pull off. And we can remove that at this time, or we can wait and do that after we remove the flywheel. But what you do want to make sure is you don't drop anything down farther into that motor. So we've got that pulled off there. That shaft actually can slip back and forth, so make sure that doesn't slide off. Then where we're having our issue is this gear here. And so that's why we're removing the flywheel, so we can get this gear off. That is called an intermediate drive gear. And so we're going to take this flywheel puller here, and I do sell these on our store. Make sure you check those out. I'll put a link below. May not look identical to this. This one actually has grooves in it. Most of the time I don't have these grooves in here. I don't understand the purpose of that. It actually makes it a little more difficult to get things lined up and straight. So if somebody has any idea why they make these grooves or why they put those in there, maybe you could let me know. Otherwise, the puller that you'll receive from me is not going to have these grooves in there. It just makes it more difficult to get things lined up. So slide that onto our flywheel there. And again, be really careful. This is reverse threaded, so make sure you've got it going on the right way. And then as soon as you've threaded on a couple times, you can go a little bit faster, put a little more pressure to it, but you don't want to just take and crank on it right away because you want to make sure that you're going straight. So get that straightened up just like that. We can take, and if you can see that there, if the shock's not in your way, take and spin this shaft in, and then we'll take an impact. And this one happens to take a 7/8 socket here. So we'll put a 7/8 socket, and it's probably not going to take a whole lot of force to pull this off of there. And you'll spin this. This will be regular threaded. All right, then we'll take, and you can see it there, just pop off of there. And then gonna make sure it doesn't, I don't want it to fall off all the way. And then I want to try to hold these gears in place there. So I'm just gonna slide that out of there, being very careful. I want to inspect this bearing, make sure that that's in good condition. See a little bit of wear there. That should not actually be on this actual flywheel, which makes me think something's up with this. So I'm going to set that down. Very carefully, you don't want to drop that. Show you what that looks like there and behind there. So we've got our starter idler gear here. We've got another idler gear here. This is what they call an intermediate gear. So there's the grooving that I'm talking about. I don't think that's going to affect performance, but it's just not exactly how it's supposed to be. So I'm going to pull this off of there. We do have a keeper that's going to sit in behind here. So you either want to remove that or make sure that that stays there. We're going to pull this out. And that is where I'm seeing our issue is. You can see we have our guide here. We have this bolt right here that's starting to come out of there. So you can't really see it very well. I'm going to pull this gear off of here. And then I'm going to check this and see if it's just loose. Hopefully that's the case. Doesn't feel loose. But I don't want any damage to be on this crankcase. That would be a bad situation. So I'll inspect that quick. I'll have my snap ring pliers here. Pull this snap ring off. And we wouldn't actually need to pull this snap ring or gear to get to that bolt there, but I just want to see. I actually think I might pull that bolt out of there. We've got a washer there. Then here's that nut that I was talking about earlier. You can see there, it's somewhat adjustable. Okay, so this is gonna be a 6mm Allen. At this point, I need to probably loosen that and just see what is going on with this bolt. So, oh shoot, it's broken. Darn it. So I'm afraid my crankcase is broken. If I pull this, I should probably, oh man. There's the bolt there. That's not supposed to look like that. Not totally sure what happened there, but if you can see that, that bolt is not in great shape. So I'm gonna see if I can find a bolt like this. First, I'm gonna check this size. I wanna see if that is actually broken there. My guess is that it is. But the actual guide itself, I need to get a light in there and see. All right, so that actually, the threads are okay on the actual crankcase. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the right bolt ordered, and we're gonna wanna check timing on this before we start it up, but I'm gonna leave all this covered off here, get the gasket ordered again, go ahead and order the correct bolt. And I'm wondering about some serious thread lock in there on those threads to make sure that doesn't happen again. I don't know if that was put in there without thread lock or maybe just wasn't tight enough, but it's something that we need to take care of so that doesn't happen again. After that, we will put this thing back on the ground and make sure it's good to go. We need to service this unit still, and I'll show you how to do that in a separate video. So stick with us. We will get those parts ordered and get this razor put back together. All right, so got the bolt in here. I actually thread locked it, put it already in. And then I'm gonna go back. We've cleaned up our gasket surface here. We've got a new gasket we're gonna install. So we got our gasket surface all cleaned up. I like to do that before I put any of these components in here because if you're starting to drop any sort of gasket particles down in here, say you've got your starter gear on there, some of your idler gears, it's just gonna cause more areas for that debris to sit. So we've got our gear here, and remember this was kind of a problem area before. We snugged up that nut there. I'm gonna double check that that's tightened up. All right, I've actually got a 13/16 socket on here. Remember, this is reverse threaded, so to tighten it down, you wanna take and turn it left hand. Now that we have that on, we've got our starter gear here that slides on. I'm not sure, it's directional, so slide that on either direction. Now, if you see how well that spins, remember before it was catching on that bolt there that was sliding out. And then we've got our snap ring here I'm gonna install. Okay, we're gonna slide that snap ring on there. You do wanna make sure that you can kind of see or hear it click into place there. You don't want that to be set on there and then that not fit properly. Next, we've got our starter gear here. You can see there that bushing pops out. So we're actually going to replace this gear. It's a little ground up there, not terrible. Let me slide this on again. Okay, that's our starter gear here. So that's slid on. All right, we'll take our woodruff key then, put it into place there. You do want to make sure that that's pretty close to flat. If anything, you want it tapered down this direction, if you can tell which direction that is, so that our flywheel can slide over top of it. Okay, then when we get that into place there, grab your flywheel, kind of know where that indentation is for that woodruff key. Save a little bit of time putting it together there, kind of spin it into place, and then you can slide it back. The next thing you want to do is take your finger, kind of run it in behind there, and turn it, because that'll help get everything lined up. And then you should be able to just spin this one direction. So if you can spin it both directions, you know you've got your bearing in behind here is either bad or you're not all the way in. It should be fairly close to flush here. And I like to take and tap on it just with my hand, get it in there as far as you can. Now the next thing, you've got, remember, your larger bolt here that we're gonna obviously thread lock. We're gonna run that in. That's gonna smash it on the rest of the way. Before you forget, you wanna make sure and get this gear in there. Make sure that that gear will spin on that shaft freely. You want to take this, the more spread out gears is going to be in, and there's no washers on either side. So that you don't have to worry about, and you have to line that up with the actual starter itself. Line it up with the gears on the inside, and then once you get those both lined up, you can push that shaft in there. And now you won't be able to spin any of that because your starter will actually be holding everything into place there. So got that in, and then we'll take, and I'm gonna put some thread lock on this bolt here. Make sure your threads are cleaned out. Make sure there's not oil sitting in there or that thread lock won't adhere properly. We'll put a couple drops on there. It doesn't take much at all. When you're screwing this in, it'll actually kind of spread all that Loctite out. And you take and run that in. I like to start it with my hands. Then you can grab an impact and start it. This is going to be torqued down. I'll get you those torque specs. I just kind of go off a feel with my impact. Since it is Loctited, I'm not too specific on how tight that is going to be, but you obviously don't want it too loose. Okay, now we're going to be ready for our gasket, and we're going to be ready for our stator and stator cover. Get that. Again, this was all cleaned up beforehand. Slide that gasket on our two posts there. One on the top here, one on the bottom. That'll hold that gasket into place. And then over here, just kind of a little bit floppy, so we might have to push that up and down a little bit when we get that cover on. Cover is all cleaned out, ready to go back on there. Our stator's tightened down and positioned the way that it should be. Take and slide that into place there. Make sure nothing's in behind it, because once you get into place there, it kind of suck itself on. You saw it kind of jerk out of my hands there. You want to be really careful with that gasket. That's going into place where it needs to be. And then slide that in. Now that gasket, you should still be able to move a little bit because when you're putting these bolts in there, you might have to take and push that gasket a little bit one way or the other to get these bolts in there, because you don't want to just take and push these bolts through that gasket. You'll end up ripping that gasket in that area. So On these bolts here, you've got this holder. You want to make sure that that's in position. That slides down there just like that. We'll take and start that one. And I'll run underneath here and make sure that gasket is in place the rest of the way around.